What comes included in the box is a graphics card support bracket, or as CoolerMaster like to call it, a VGA holder. Now this is mainly going to be seen in Crossfire and SLI configurations, and it has also got the ability to house an 80mm fan, but be warned, it will only take a thickness of 15mm. We also have a 5¼ inch to 3½ inch mesh drive panel. We also have two 3½ inch brackets, plenty of cable ties for cable management, a guide on the VGA holder. We also have an installation guide for the case itself. We have a power supply mesh panel, an assortment of fixtures and fittings including motherboard standoffs. There is also this little mechanism here which is for sliding through the side of the case and the back of the case so that you can actually wrap a padlock on it. We also have 4 plastic rivets for fitting the fan, and we also have this external speaker because obviously a lot of motherboards these days don't have onboard speakers, so this will go straight onto the speaker header on the motherboard and output to this speaker. On the top of the case you can see that it uses this metal mesh design. You can see that it has also got this plastic panel here. Now it has got one bit that actually slides out and you can do whatever you want with that, and then it's just a matter of getting a hard drive like this one and slotting it in, and it will actually connect in, and there is your SATA port connection. So it has got various different connections on this case, but on this actual panel it does fit a 3½ inch hard drive. Just next to where you'd obviously put an external hard drive in, we can see that there's various different connections and buttons. We can see that there's one button here which actually turns the fan light on and off on the front of the case. We can see that we have a eSATA port here, a USB port here, headphone port, microphone jack, another USB port, a reset button, power button, and also 2 LEDs. Looking just below the buttons and connections, we can see that the theme is exactly the same as the top with this metal mesh design. We can see that it has these silver bits sort of following the contour of the case, and we can see exactly where the drive bays would go. Now it has got 4 spaces for drives, but you don't have to use it with 5¼ inch drives. You can use the adapter that comes with it to fit smaller drives into this case, into them particular spaces. We can see as we look further down the case that there is a CoolerMaster logo down here, which is sort of covering over the blue LED fan that we will show you in more detail a little bit later on. Taking a look at the side of the case, we can see that it's made out of black steel, and it has got one hole for a ventilation fan. Now be warned, if you did decide to put a fan here, you will only be able to use a maximum fan of 80mm by 15mm thick because of the clearance between the actual side of the case and the motherboard tray. If you did decide to fit a fan here, it would be aiding in cooling the underside of the CPU socket as well as the area surrounding it, for instance where the PWMs are. Taking a look at the other side, we can see once again black steel, but we can see there are 2 spaces for fans, and they are a lot bigger. Now if you did decide to fit optional fans here, you could use various different sizes including 120mm or 140mm. Sadly it doesn't come with these fans, but most cases don't. They generally only come with the front, rear and maybe a top fan. Whereas this one, if you did decide to fit 2 fans, it would help in aiding the CPU socket as well as where your graphics cards and other PCI expansion cards would be. Now taking a look at the back of the case, we can see straight away at the top that there are 2 rubber grommets for water cooling tubing. We can also see that it does come pre-installed with 1 fan. Now this fan is a 120mm fan and operates at 1200 RPM at 17 decibels, so fairly quiet. We can also see exactly where your I/O panel would go for your motherboard. The expansion slots, we can see that there are 7 expansion slots here, as well as another one over here in case you were using a riser card or something similar. We can see that as we look down the bottom of the case, that exactly where the power supply would go, and there's also this little slot over here. Now if you go back to the beginning of this video, we did explain that there is a locking mechanism which would slide into there to lock the side of your case. We can also see that there are 4 thumb screws holding the side of the case on. Now taking a look at the inside of the case, we can see that the colour scheme follows the rest of the case, being black. Now there are a lot of manufacturers out there who do decide to actually skimp on the inside of the case by just having a boring bland colour, but CoolerMaster have decided to go all out and have everything absolutely black. We can also see exactly where the fan would go on the other side, and we can see how much clearance we've actually got for CPU, heat sinks, as well as the sort of clearance that we'd get for a graphics card. Now be warned, we have researched into this and it doesn't look like a Radeon 5970 would be able to fit in here. Now one of the main features of this case is the fact that it is a toolless design, so fitting a CD drive is quite easy to do. It is just a matter of putting it into the open position, sliding your drive in and locking it back down. Now for hard drives it is a very similar task, just opening this up and pulling it out, which is where you can fit your 3.5-inch drives. Now if you have got SSDs, which I'm guessing a lot of people have, on the top one they do come supplied with this bracket, of which you can put one SSD into there, and you've also got the room to slide one under here and screw that down as well. So especially for us, because we are using a RAID configuration, it was quite handy having that bracket there. And carrying on looking at the rest of the toolless design on this case, we can see exactly where the PCI slots would go, and that it's all controlled via thumb screws. Now one thing this case has got that you don't really see on many cases these days is this little table here explaining, if you have a micro ATX board or an ATX board, exactly where to put the motherboard standoffs, and that ranges from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I and J, K, L. And you can see when you actually look at the motherboard tray that there are various different holes which are labelled. So we can see up here we have B, over here is A, and so forth. So you can see exactly where your motherboard standoffs would have to go. And lastly, looking at the fan connectors on this board, we can see that it actually comes off into a 3-pin connector, which can then be converted into Molex. So you can run this either on your motherboard, or you can run it directly from a power supply. As mentioned, this case has got a fan situated here. Now this fan is a blue LED fan, and there is a switch on top to turn it on, and very nice looking it is. But if you are going to be using this computer case in say the room that you sleep in, you may want to turn the LED side of it off so that it doesn't bother you when you're sleeping. But if you want to show it off to your friends, you can turn it back on again. Now that we've installed our test rig in there, which is the Asus Crosshair Full Formula, reference card 6850 and 8GB of Kingston memory, as well as this beefy BFG power supply, you can see exactly where the cable management comes into play. You can see that it is all very neat and tidy. We won't show you the other side because, I'll be honest, it does look an absolute mess. And to be honest, this is the side that you're going to be looking at the most, which straight away you can see is very clean and very tidy. And no matter what sort of system you've got in here, you could have mass amounts of hard drives, all of the cables are going to be rerouted back to the other side.